Welcome back, I'm Brent Meredith. No matter who we are, who we love, or how we live our lives, each of us has experienced life in the light and in the shadows. Our choices during those moments help us define who we are, for better or for worse. My guest tonight felt a calling to share his personal journey in which he reconciles all the ways as a gay man that he played with those two cosmic forces. Here with us now is APSU Professor Emeritus of Communications, Ted Jones. Welcome, Ted.
Thank you, Brent. Great to be with you today.
Yes, good to see you too. And in the interest of full disclosure, we're longtime friends.
Yes.
Ted Jones was the very first professor I ever had in the very first college class I ever had. So
yes.
Thank you for getting me here today.
Well, it's great to see that I did such a good job.
I like that. That's good. So in the interest of time, too, I know we've got a lot to cover here, and we've got a lot of good clips. Let's jump into your current work. But before we do that, just tell us a quick little history of you and how we got here.
Okay. Well, I was a college professor, of course, in communication and theater. But before that, I was a music professor, and I taught music in public school. I've always loved the arts. That's been my background. And so this piece that I've created really looks into my experience with the arts and how the arts are reflected in life.
Cool. That's a great answer, because that's going to flow well right into the clips. And we've got about 5 different ones, so let's get started. We've got them, and we'll talk about them on the back end. Here's the first one.
It was the early 1980s, and the shadow of AIDS eclipsed the first light of freedom that many men had ever felt. For me, the devastation was real and personal. By 1984, I had lost 54 men I knew to AIDS, including my 2 best friends.
Wow, that's obviously you on stage, I believe, at the Roxy, right, in Clarksville?
That's right.
So how did that, tell me about that scene.
Well, when I was in New York, I'd gone to study acting in New York, and that scene talks about my experience there when AIDS crisis hit, and when it happened so quickly. Within 2 weeks, people that were perfectly healthy had died.
54
we didn't know what
people, right? 54?
54 by 1984, and after that, I didn't count anymore. But yeah, it was a very critical time to be there. We didn't know what was happening, and it was shortly after that I decided it was time to leave New York, and I came back home and faced other shadows once that I got back home.
Okay, let's look at the next clip.
His old sweet song is
Great. Now, obviously, you're playing the harp. We didn't address that yet, but that is clearly a talent of yours. Tell us a little bit about the song and your performance.
The Nightingale is a song that was written originally by a female composer that I worked with, and she had written it as a memorial to her mother. I worked at the New York City Opera for a while and had a lot of friends in the men's chorus there. Between one season and the next, a number of them had died from AIDS, and they had to totally replace, well, not totally, but most of the people who were singing in the chorus had to be replaced.
Wow.
And this song, The Nightingale, who will sing for the nightingale when he sleeps alone in the sun, I'm doing the show in honor and memorial of those men that had died.
Cool. And I think we've got another clip here that might be a little bit more lighthearted, so let's take a quick gander at that if we could. Okay. You got everything in the show. We want to hit it all.
When we finished, I went and sat in a pew and looked up at the minister who I had known for years. His children and I had been in school together, and my parents and he were close. As I listened to his familiar voice, I had no idea that what he said next would tear into my heart. He quietly began his sermon, Sodom, Gomorrah, and AIDS.
Forgive me, that was not the clip I was expecting, but that is a much heavier clip. And I can relate to that. What was that like sitting in church, though, and hearing that?
That was my first Sunday back in church after I left New York, after the AIDS epidemic had hit. It was very tough to come back to church and to hear Sodom, Gomorrah, and AIDS as the sermon topic. And also it was tough to put it into the show because I had such a visceral response to it that the blues song that I created to sing after this, God comes in and says, you can deal with the devil or you can deal with me. If you deal with the devil, it's going to be a sad road. If you come to life with love in your heart, then you will be able to face whatever shadows come.
We've got one more clip I want to get in before we go. This is the one I'm thinking of. Let's play that one real quick, and we've got a few seconds afterwards.
Okay.
But something else was wrong. God was calling. As they began the beautiful overture, brilliant overture to Act 4, and I began to get into character, the horse began
about 30 seconds.
farting. The smell was... Everybody backstage scattered and muttered, gasping for air, and looking at me and the horse with dirty looks. Well, I didn't feel exactly safe going on stage riding a farting horse. But the show must go on.
So riding a farting horse. I mean, there's a lot more to that story we didn't get to show. So
there's a lot more to that story. Yes, that was one of the lighter parts of being in New York, and that was at the City Opera, a true story that happened to me there.
Now, I know if people want to catch the show or want to see more, how do they? What's the procedure there? How do they reach you? I think we're going to be able to put some on screen.
I've got a website, tedjonesharp.com. You can contact me through there. There's also a link to the full video if anyone wanted to see that there. I also have a YouTube channel, Ted Jones Harp, that you can see the full performance on. I'm presently doing a 45-minute version of this show around. I just did it in North Carolina last weekend, and so I'm looking for opportunities to present it to other audiences closer to home, I hope.
Well, thank you, Ted. I'm so glad you got to be here with us, and we'll have to have you back again for your next show, okay?
Thanks, Brent.
And that's all the time we have this evening, so until next time, we'll see you here on Out and About Today.